Hello, my name's Matt Jasa, and here's my life in the day sign. It didn't turn out quite like I expected, but sometimes that's how life goes. Hello, and welcome back. This is some of my video submission to the 2020 Life in a Day project. It's sort of a crowdsourced documentary or time capsule of what it was like during People's Day on July 25th, 2020. It's actually a pretty neat project as it gives you a different perspective or view from people all over the world. And so all the footage you're seeing here was recorded on the 25th, except for the intro with the music and this voiceover. And since I've been on this glass adventure for several years now, I decided to make a glass sign to document my journey. And I'm not sure if any of my footage will be used in the feature film, but I figured it'd be neat to post it here and give you kind of a heads up on the project. And so this type of art form is normally called lampworking. And not because we make lamps, but traditionally they used oil lamps to melt the glass. And now with that said, I actually do make oil lamps. I invented my own with an all-glass wick. I've been using the same wick for almost 3 years since I made it. I've also only had to fill it once. It's incredibly efficient. But other than that, I do like to attempt other science projects. Lately, I've been working a lot with electromagnets. And it has been a bit difficult though, as I don't have a lot of funding coming in. If you're curious of how I acquired all my equipment and supplies, I used to work as a custodian, cleaning up and getting a small business ready for the day. I was saving up quite a bit, and I didn't know what I was planning to do, until one day I found some lampworking videos on YouTube. And I didn't jump right into it. I actually took about 8 or 9 months watching and studying the process to see if I was really wanting to go at it. And I'm super thankful I did, because I really enjoy it, and making these videos. Eventually, once I had enough equipment and supplies ready, I parted ways with my old path. I remember at first it was quite a shock to the senses to start working for myself, starting my own business. But at the same time, it was very liberating. I finally felt like I could get out and stretch my wings. One of my first more popular videos was the glass chain necklace, the one I'm wearing right now. It has 10,000 views currently, which is pretty good for me. And then my largest project and longest video would have to be the glass water wheel, the one you see here in the background. It does function. I was even planning to build a small electric generator for it. And in front of that is the glass scale, a more recent project. I had to build it in a way that it could be taken apart and annealed in the kiln. And now I haven't annealed any of these pieces for the sign, so hopefully nothing ends up breaking. I'm just gonna have to hope for the best as I start to assemble all these pieces together. I did take a small break here to cool off. It was pretty hot that day. I believe it was about 95 degrees Fahrenheit around this time, which does make it a little bit more hazardous to be lampworking in such high temperatures. You need to take some extra precautions against dehydration and also heat exhaustion. And so I'm working on the hardest letter now, the D. It's going to require a lot of smaller bends to get a nice curve. Overall, this really isn't a very difficult project. It's not very technical. It's mainly coming down to heat control. I need to use enough heat to bend and melt the glass together, but not so much that it starts to droop and become misshapen. It's definitely a smaller window or gradient of heat that I'm trying to work within. And now I could use some larger rods, which would allow more heat and be easier to weld together. But there's a bigger chance that internal stress would begin to build, and cracks would start to form on their own. I know at first it may seem like a more random process. Why does glass prefer to crack in some situations more than others? But I can assure you it is quite the opposite. It's a very deterministic process. For example, I recently blew up a marble using internal stress from how I made it and how I let it cool. So I knew it was going to come apart eventually. I just didn't know when. I was estimating probably 20 to 30 seconds, but it took a whole 15 minutes. And so that's where the kiln comes in handy, to help dissolve that stress and let it cool down at a very slow rate. But it's not required to practice or do a project like this. But I do recommend the kiln if you're planning to sell your work. You definitely don't want your glass coming apart on your customers. I am planning to make a video on some cheaper ways to get around the kiln for your practice sessions. This is an art form after all, so practicing will definitely be your biggest benefit to your progress. I know we often put a lot of emphasis on techniques, but it's really the practice you do which makes those techniques really shine through. And so I'll begin to attach all these words together to form one large sign, and then carefully hang it up in my studio somewhere. Eventually I want to start making some neon signs. That would be pretty cool, but it does require some extra equipment, which I don't have. And so I have the N attached. Everything's a little bit larger than I expected, so I'm going to have to be extra careful attaching this A. And that's definitely not what I wanted to happen there. But I'm going to keep pushing forward. That's the important thing, is just keeping on that dedicated path. I'm going to attach the A and then remake the N and reattach that. Oh, and my A falls apart from the internal stress. And I'm getting a little bit exhausted here at this point, as you can tell. And so I still want to push forward. I want to keep going, but I'm going to have to rethink this process here. I'm going to have to come up with a new plan. When you end up with multiple failures or accidents in a row, that's usually a good sign you need to change what you're doing. And so instead, I think I'll attach each word separately to some pegboard using wire ties. I normally don't like to bring in alternate materials into my projects. I kind of like to keep them all glass, except when absolutely necessary, like magnets and electricity. And so here is the last part of my video submission. And so I have 4 questions here to answer. The first one is, what do I love most? And besides my family, I think it would be the search for adventure, finding out new things, learning new phenomena, trying to invent new devices. Like here's a glass candle I made. It has a forever wick. The wick doesn't burn down because it's made of glass. Second, what do I fear most? And that would be finding myself alone in a scary or dangerous situation. You know, not having someone there by my side. That could be pretty scary. Third would be, what would I like to see change in myself or the world? And I think for the world, we could use a little bit more teamwork. You know, binding together to defeat difficult challenges. And then 4 would be, what is in my pocket? And that would be nothing. Nothing's in my pocket. I normally carry a wallet and keys, but not a cell phone. I used to, but I really was hating that fear of losing it. So in order to break that fear, I got rid of it. And so I hope you enjoyed this video and hope to see you more. My name is Jasa. Thank you for watching.